2013. It is approximately 6:35 p.m. Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Cordova.
Here.
Councilmember Abeyta. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Peralta.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
Youth Councilman Member Landgraf.
Here. Okay, it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Gonzalez.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next, we will go to item 5.4, approval of the agenda. Is there any changes or amendments to the agenda as presented?
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
I have none, Mr. Mayor. Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll go to item 5A, approval of the meeting minutes of June 11th, 2013, regular meeting minutes. Are there any questions to those meeting minutes as presented?
I have none, Mr. Mayor. None, Mr. Mayor.
None, Mr. Mayor. Move for approval.
Motion to approve. All those in favor signify, and is there a second?
Second. I think he's second.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next we have the meeting minutes of June 25th, 2013. Any questions to those meetings minutes as presented?
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
None, Mr. Mayor. None, Mr. Mayor. Move to approve. Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next we will go to awards and recognitions. And we will go to this time I'd like to call up the representative of Walmart to come up at this time. Do we have any of the representatives from Walgreens, Smith's, Super Save, or Albertsons here, or Walgreens? Seeing that there's none, I would ask that the town manager present these on our behalf, or I actually would like to go to the store itself to present this. This is in recognition of your ability to recognize government concerns. Please express to Mr. Steele our sincere appreciation for stopping the fireworks at our request. Of course, Walmart had already done that internally, but the intent, they listened loud and clear to the county commission and the town of Taos, and we sincerely appreciate that because that was clearly in the best interest of our community. So with that, I'd like to read this certificate, and it reads as follows. The Town of Taos Certificate of Appreciation. This certificate is awarded to Walmart. The Town of Taos would like to commend you for your willingness to take steps to protect health, safety, and welfare of our community by eliminating fireworks sales prior to July 4th of this year. Your action as part of our community is very much appreciated. Signed this day, Office of the Mayor, July 9th, 2013. Thank you so much. And Abigail, if we can have my secretary set up a meeting with each one of the managers, and we'll present those in person.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for being here on behalf of Walmart. Thanks. Okay, next we will go to the Citizens Forum. The Citizens Forum will go to item 7. And those wishing to speak on the Citizens Forum is Mr. Northrup. Mr. Northrup, welcome to our meeting.
Thank you. Last Sunday, while picketing, I had 9 step stools and 13 signs stolen on 4 separate times over a 4-hour period. At least 7 of the signs and 7 step stools were tossed into a vehicle owned by Amos Khan's AC Towing. Two Sundays prior to that, June 23rd, I had 4 step stools and 4 signs stolen. At least 2 of each of these by Evan Cordova, the mayor's son. For whatever reason, the Taos police have been ordered to not even write an incident report when my signs are stolen. At one point last Sunday, I became virtually hysterical as I helplessly watched my property being stolen from right under my nose.
Mr. Northrup, I'm going to stop you there. You're saying that your signs are stolen. You're making accusations. I don't know of anyone that is charged. So I'm going to ask you to refrain from accusing people and naming people in this chambers.
And officer, all I tell you is what I see.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now that you're not going to make accusations, false accusations on anybody.
They're not false. But instead of using the word stolen, I'll say they were taken. And Officer Virgil Vigil, violating police policy, agreed to document 2 of the incidents. Since Bill Morris was hired 2 years ago, I've had thousands of dollars of picketing-related property unlawfully taken from me, most by town police and code enforcement, the rest by various miscreants, such as Amos Khan and Evan Cordova.
Mr. Northrup, this will be your last warning.
I didn't say that they were stolen. I said they were taken.
I'm saying you're naming people that have not been charged with anything, and I'm not going to allow you to do that, period.
No, I didn't claim they had been charged.
I'm not going to argue with you.
That's
This
half
is
the
your last
problem.
warning. Okay, we're going to go to the next person. We're going to go to the next person.
I will refrain.
We're going to go to the next person. I've already asked you very politely.
You asked me
Now,
not
I'm
to say
asking you to leave
stolen.
right now.
I did
Chief,
not use the
Chief.
word stolen. I don't think this is fair. This is a citizens forum. I'm not to be censored. I'm here to talk to the local government.
The mayor has trespassed you from town property. You need to leave.
I have things to say yet. This is a citizens
Come back
forum.
next week if you can abide by the rules. You've been trespassed from the property. I'm asking you to leave.
Leave here, sit down there. Is that okay?
If you can remain in proper decorum, you're allowed to stay in the chambers. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak under the citizens forum at this time? Seeing none, we'll go to the items. Item 8A, presentation by Carol Dunning-Mirabal of Taos County Juvenile Justice Program. Carol, welcome to our meeting. You're here to give an update and presentation regarding the program and how it serves our community.
Yes, I am.
Of course, this is a very viable program. Thank you for everything you do.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council, audience. My name is Carol Mirabal. I'm the project coordinator for the Taos County Juvenile Justice Board, and I will try and see if I can do this.
We need to close the lights, or?
Do you need? Oh, you guys see it. Okay. One of the challenging things about the Taos County Juvenile Justice Board is people have a really hard time understanding who we are, and we're actually a formal collaboration. And by statute, the following people are supposed to be on our board: juvenile probation, law enforcement, courts, youth service providers, faith-based community members, educators, business community, public defenders. I don't know that they're up there. But what we do is we ensure a formal collaboration, and we coordinate a continuum of services for juveniles. And what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to look at our community and identify gaps in services. We're also, and this is by statute, supposed to provide non-secure alternatives to detention and juvenile probation diversion. We're also, one of our goals is to ensure community safety and reduce recidivism. And we want to hold youth accountable, and we have to use evidence-based best practice interventions and treatment, and we have to provide a cost savings to our community. This is all kind of outlined in the statute. We've actually been around since 2005. In the summer of 2003, I don't know if it was the summer of 2003 or the summer of 2004, but that was a really particularly violent summer. People in the community refer to it as the Mustang shootings. A large number of young people were killed that year. And out of kind of the violence and the tragedy, people started coming together in public forums to say, well, what is it that we can do so this doesn't happen every year? And at that time, there was a funding opportunity that presented itself through the federal government that the town took advantage of. And the problem with federal funding, as you all know, is that federal funding runs out. It's usually time limited to 3 years. And at the time, there were 12 of these continuum sites around the state of New Mexico, and they got together and we were able to lobby the legislature for funding through CYFD. Part of the law says that CYFD has to contract with a local unit of government and that we have to provide alternatives to detention. We have to address the issue of disproportionate minority contact, and that happens in our community. We have a disproportionate number of youth of color that end up in the system. We also have to provide gender-specific programming, and everything that we do has to be evidence treatment. It can't be just because someone thinks, oh, this is a good idea. There has to be a study showing that this actually works. And what we really try and do is reduce recidivism. So in the beginning, we identified some needs that we wanted to focus on, and those needs were we wanted to do restorative justice circles, we wanted to do intensive community monitoring, we wanted to do a learning lab, we wanted to do girls' circle, and then later on we identified gang prevention as something we wanted to be involved in. Restorative justice is actually, it's an evidence-based approach that is used internationally, especially it started out in a lot of Native American communities and indigenous peoples, but it's really, the focus is on repairing the harm, and we do it in a family group conference, and it involves a safe place for people to talk about the harm that is done and how to set things right. And one of the things that we find that happens with young people is oftentimes their view of the world is very narrow, and they don't see how their actions impact the larger world, their parents, their schools, their communities. So the goals of RJ are to have the young person take responsibility for his or her behavior and to repair the harm done, and we want to reduce the risk of future offending, and we want to restore the faith and trust in the community. And initially when we started out with our RJ circles, we were doing pretty low-level stuff. It was mostly kind of fights that happened in school. Lately we've seen much more serious crimes, and we've even dealt with some murder trials. We're not murder trials, I'm sorry. We've dealt with victims who have been accused of murder. But victims are given an opportunity to participate in the justice process, and the process encourages creative, positive, workable solutions. And what we find happens is that when families are in a safe environment, it almost always improves the family interactions. And what we do is we come up with a plan that names the harm and how to repair it, and then that plan is monitored by the JPO. We also do intensive community monitoring. Intensive community monitoring, the idea behind it is instead of placing kids in juvenile detention between the time they're arrested and the time they have their first court hearing, it used to be that they stayed in detention, and now we put them in intensive community monitoring. And so while they're in intensive community monitoring, we provide them with an assessment, they check in, they have to do drug testing. if it's appropriate. And they have to see their counselor if that's part of what the recommendations are. They have to either attend school or be part of a GED program. And then we contact people to make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing. And again, that's a best practice model to help keep kids out of the system. Because research shows that the longer kids are in the system, the more bleaker their future looks. We also started, I think in 2007, we started the Learning Lab, and we contract through Rocky Mountain Youth Corps for that. And right now they serve kids that are in the middle school. And basically kids go there for a half a day, 5 days a week. They have to be referred through the JPO or they're referred through the school. But the Learning Lab is kind of a way for kids and families to kind of step back, and they get real intensive attention during this time. And hopefully after the Learning Lab, they go back into the school system and they kind of get back on track again. Rocky Mountain Youth Corps uses a lot of experiential learning. They also use a lot of community service, and most of the youth are involved pretty intensely in community service. This year, I think they did most of their community service with St. James Episcopal Church as part of the food bank program. They do lots of different things at the Learning Lab. They do conflict resolution. They do anger management. It's a small group of kids, so they can really work pretty intensely to help them with their issues. We also do something called Girls Circle, because the research has shown that if you treat girls in the system the same way you treat boys, you're not very successful, because girls have different issues. One of the issues that girls often experience is sexual abuse, and that's a little bit different than what you see with young males. So we do Girls Circle. We do those at the school, in the middle school. We do them, we have 3 different groups that we have going now. But it's, the girls meet together in a group setting once a week, and they talk about risky behaviors and relationships, because relationships are really important to girls that age. And one of the things that our facilitator has started doing is she started partnering with Santa Fe Mountain Center, and now the girls go on several trips during the course of the year in conjunction with the Santa Fe Mountain Center, and they do rock climbing, they do rappelling, they do things that most girls don't normally think they can do, and it's very it's very good to see girls' sense of accomplishment when they've done something like that, because normally it's not something they think they can ever do. And then a few years ago, we really wanted to address the issue of gangs in our community, and there was kind of an agreement that it's better to try and get kids from joining gangs than it is to try and intervene once they're heavily in gangs, because there hasn't been a lot of success with that. So we started a program called GRIP, which is Gang Resistance is Powerful. It's a curriculum that we do in the 5th grade and in the 2nd grade at Ranchos Elementary School and at Enos Elementary School. And I understand that the school board is going to try and get it also at Arroyos del Norte for next year. But we contract with Nonviolence Works, and part of the idea is that the kids that are identified through the curriculum are then referred to Nonviolence Works for, and I'm sorry, I still have their old name there. We refer them for mentoring. And then I know I promised to be brief, but we've actually, this is some of the things that in the last 2 years, some statistics, and I'm not going to go over those unless you really want me to. But basically, what we found is that there's definitely a cost savings. It cost in the town of Taos, not the town of Taos, Taos County charges $120 per day for every juvenile that's kept in detention. It is much cheaper to do prevention. It is even cheaper to do the kinds of programs we do than even like residential treatment or detention. But the other thing is if we can invest in our youth, it comes back to our community in better rates of high school graduation. When you have kids that can graduate and get good jobs, it decreases the health cost of the community, and it makes for a better community for everybody. We actually meet every second Tuesday. That's a mistake. We were meeting on the third Tuesday, and we changed it. We meet on the second Tuesday of the month at 7:30 a.m. in the morning, and I'm always really pleased that at 7:30 in the morning we actually get people to go to our meetings. We meet at the HRDA conference room on Goosdorf Road, and our meetings are public and everybody's invited, and I would invite anybody here. If you would like to come to any of our meetings, you would certainly be more than welcome. And that's it. And if you have any questions?
Thank you. I just want to say, thanks for all you do for our community. I really believe, and I like the program there that where it addresses our youth before they get into gangs. Kids aren't born criminals. It's a learned behavior. They learn that hate. They learn that, and they're reaching out. They want to be a part of something, and that's why I make it a point that anytime I have a chance to go and speak with them as mayor and the importance in staying off drugs, staying in school, staying on track. I think that's a good message that we can all as a community give to our kids so that they don't graduate into that to gangs, because they get into trouble, small issues while they're in school, and if we're not tough on them at that level, then they just graduate into the next level of crime, and before you know it, they're the ones that are going through our justice system. So I really believe that prevention is really the only way we're going to get to this. So. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Again, thank you for the briefing. It's always nice to see community programs like this actually being put to use and to work. My 9-year-old is at Ranchos Elementary, and this was his first year going through the GRIP program, and it was nice to see him coming home and talking about why you don't join a gang and all the, and I think there's some demographic issues that we face also. I mean, kids come from very different and diverse homes, and that's the issue. But for me, I guess I've always looked at it from a standpoint that says incarceration, I think, makes them harder criminals than what they actually are, and some of it might be, really, really minor offenses. So I really, really like that the program harvests the kids at a very, very young age, because that's where they need it the most. So thank you for the presentation, and I'm glad to see, in my own personal life that it's working. So.
Thank you. And I'd really like to thank the town for their support. The people that I work with at the town have been really top-notch professionals, and they've been really, really good to work with. And I really appreciate that, and thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Youth Councilmember Landgraf? Carol, Youth Councilmember wanted to mention something to you.
I'd just like to thank you for all the work that you do for the youth in Taos, first of all. And, I just, as you were going through the last 2 years, I caught one of the statistics as 45 youth were taken out of detention in the past 2 years. And I think that that's an incredible rate, that we can be doing that, and that it's reducing the recidivism by not having them become, harder criminals while they're inside. And this is even before they could be taken to trial. And, there's just so many benefits that you're bringing to the table, and I really thank you for all of your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Okay, next we will go to item B, grant agreement with the New Mexico Children's, Youth and Families Department. Consideration and approval to accept grant agreement 14690-16398 of the New Mexico Children's, Youth and Families Department in the amount of $134,000, and authorization for the mayor to enter into a grant agreement. This grant will be used for operations of the Taos County Juvenile Justice Program from July 1st, 2013 to June 20th, 2014. The town of Taos will act as fiscal agent. Abigail?
Mr. Mayor, council members, Mayor, I think you just covered that. The town of Taos does act as the fiscal agent for the Juvenile Justice Board in order for them to receive the grant in the amount of $134,000. So the staff is recommending approval.
Okay. Councilmember Peralta.
Yeah, just a quick question. Has the town of Taos been the fiscal agent since the inception of this program, or has this been in the county at any time?
There was a period, I think, for 2 years when it was with the county. It was probably 2007.
Yeah, it was 2 years. I don't know what 2 years, but it was a couple of years at the county.
Do we know what the ratio of persons utilizing the juvenile justice, the ratio from the town and the county?
Well, for some, our services are available to everybody,
Sure.
but the reality is that we don't go out to the communities, so that the majority of people that receive the services are from the town of Taos.
Well, they come to the office, but you probably don't have a mechanism on how you look where their residency is at, whether it's in the town boundaries or
Right.
in the county as a whole.
Right.
Okay. Well, it's a great service for our whole community. I mean, crime doesn't know any boundaries, so it's a great service, and we're happy to do this. What is the pleasure of the council?
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next, we will go, thank you, Carol. Thank you. Next, we'll go to item C, approval of lodgers tax agreed upon procedures for fiscal year 2011-2012. Review and approval of the lodgers tax agreed upon procedures, lodgers tax receipts collected and remitted to the town of Taos for fiscal year 2011-2012, prepared by Accounting and Consulting Group. This report is prepared in accordance with Town Code Chapter 412-150, lodgers tax audits, and NMSA 1978, Section 33814. Lodgers Tax Act, which requires audits of vendors and municipalities that collects in excess of $250,000 in occupancy tax. Marietta, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. You have in front of you the lodgers tax agreed upon procedures, as you stated, for fiscal year 11-12. This report was prepared by Accounting and Consulting Group. We did present it to the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board on June 25th with lengthy discussions when we go over the findings that are in the report. The accounting firm accounted for 20 lodging establishments out of 30 plus 32 that we have on record. They had a hard time getting some of the establishments to provide the record, so we added another 4 to the list so that we could at least meet that quota of 20. If you go to the report, I guess more is of the findings, and that's on page 30 and 31. The first finding is insufficient internal controls over the lodgers tax collection. And what they are saying here on this item is the town, we do need to establish a policy in collecting these lodgers tax receipts from some of the entities. The problem that we have as a town is the staff time to go out and really do investigations to see who should be paying lodgers tax. We've done some trainings on this so that the business community, the accountants, the establishments can get familiar with the ordinance and the compliance issues so that they can understand that they do need to pay this lodgers tax. We're doing some work with the Griffin and Associates through the advisory board on trying to do a mechanism to look into a way. I don't want to say exactly what they're going to do because I don't want to scare off people to say, you know, they're just going to look out and see what they can find of people that aren't reporting on our behalf under that part of their agreement with the advisory board. Most of the things are just Another thing is trying to develop a policy internally to do some pre-audit stuff on some of these establishments, the town ourselves, that we could do. At least a written policy to say that you need to have these certain types of records available when the auditors come. In a way, we're not providing them the information in a timely fashion to get their information to the auditors. So that was one of the recommendations. So that's one of the things that we did put in the response, that we're going to try to get a written policy together for when the next time it comes around. This is what these establishments will need: their CRS reports, their either monthly or daily night audit reports, so that they can see, a comparison. Pretty much what the auditors do when they go out on site. So of these 20 establishments, they maybe did 6 physical audits of these establishments. That's how the process works. So, and then just the other finding is just keeping up our files on the entities there with their physical address, their name change, whatever it may be, so that we can have that information accurate when they are going to do the audit on the next round. This was a little late in the year, in the fiscal year. It was done in the required amount of time for DFA to send into the report, but we've done the procurement now to do it for 3 consecutive years. So we were doing an independent procurement for each year, so now we can get this more timely done in this coming year for 12-13. I stand for any questions, whatever you may have.
Councilmember Peralta.
Thank you, Mayor. Marietta, just a quick question. The list of establishments that weren't in compliance doesn't seem to give me an indication as to whether that means they just were delinquent on taxes, or they weren't in compliance by providing records, or weren't charging the right amount, or it just doesn't say that in the report. It just says they were not in compliance.
Right. And
so it would be nice to know what the issues were with those different establishments. Were they all the same, or was it a separate issue? Because that would come into to help us with defining the policy that needs to go forward.
And I can probably get their working papers to see the exact amount. Like on the bottom it says, like, I guess I'll go to the first one, and usually they'll put the finding item under whichever establishment it is. So like if it's good, there's no exception, but like under, say, Don Fernando Hotel Suites, see finding 12-1. And I understand there's a lot of different things in there, so they're not pinpointed, but I can get their audit papers, so when we do the policy, if they didn't do the report right, or if they overpaid, or if they did whatever, that isn't in the report, but I can get that information from them and at least have a roadmap to say what we're going to put in the policy.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Mayor, I just so that's why my eyes are watery. I just want to. I know that a while back I sent Francella some individuals concerned about lodgers tax, and I believe that you guys got them that report as to who is paid, who is current, who's not, because there is some by the book lodgers, let's put it that way, that believe that it's unfair, that they're playing by the book, and they feel that their tax dollars aren't going as far as it should be because other lodgers are not putting into that pot of money that's specifically designed to bring people back in. So I really feel that we need to get a good solid mechanism in place on how to audit and how to, on an annual basis, so that it's pretty much a way of business, because a few of these lodgers have just kind of paid when they can, and they just go as they go. So I think we need to really establish that.
And we've worked with the attorneys and the legal department and the resources to put in that. So we're trying to find some kind of mechanism. It's just hard because, like the vacation, the VORBs, they can put that they have a room for rent and they don't pay the tax. It's hard to find all those because they don't have they only have physical addresses. They don't have email, or they don't have like PO boxes. So we have to do some research on that. And Sharon has started to do that, trying to do the research, trying to find some information. So I think the advisory board and the town, we do know that is an issue, and how to get that mechanism is, whatever, even with all of you giving us that information and we follow up on that, is even a step to proceed to.
And I think that the city of Santa Fe had a similar problem and they established a process of auditing. Now, auditing every single one every year is just impossible. But having a random audit process puts everybody on notice that they may come up next year and they better have the right documentation in place and prove that they have paid their lodger's tax. So I think maybe we need to evaluate that, ask Oscar to evaluate that. Do we need a staff person that can spend part-time doing that amongst other duties in the finance department so that we can ensure that those taxes are collected accordingly? Because I believe the state doesn't do that for us. It's up to us to do it.
No, it's all in our local ordinance, and I know Santa Fe did that, and they did put thousands of dollars into that to try. For them, it probably was cost effective to do that. Now for us, but we can evaluate it. We'll have, look at staff time to see how much that would bring back in return, because we do have the biggest establishments that are paying, I'm not the biggest, but the most obvious ones that we're collecting. So to find all those other ones, I don't know what return we would get, but I think they did an analysis before Kathy Connolly when she was here. And, I think she said the net would be, I don't remember, I think it was like $21,000. So. And
I think that the legal department has been in charge of collecting that, right? The paralegal? Haven't we been working on that?
Oh yeah, Cindy's vicious about it. She's very good. We did attend the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board meeting, and I got my annual beating from them about their discontent with the level of lodgers tax collection. I think that they're going to extend an invitation to you, Mr. Mayor, and any council person that wants to attend. I mean, we have some remedies that we haven't been using. For example, any of these violations are a misdemeanor. However, I have not received any direction from this council that you want to start issuing misdemeanor tickets to non-compliant folks. So the attorney's office, and I'm sure Marietta's office, would be very grateful if the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board and the council would provide some direction as to whether the community can tolerate stepped-up enforcement mechanisms.
Well, and I think that's a good idea. I remember I got a call from an establishment that wanted some consideration or a time extension to be in compliance with a fire inspection. And it was brought to my attention that they were not in good standing as far as it relates to the lodger's tax. So maybe that could be a mechanism, maybe the business issuance of business licensing. We could establish that. The fact is, who's going to do the actual audit? So, I think we just need to make that a priority administratively.
Mr. Mayor, council members, let me go ahead and take a look at the procedure or system, if you will, that Santa Fe has set up, and maybe it's something that we can piggyback off before we determine whether an employee is needed. Perhaps if we just set up a system, it's something that staff can take on internally. I just think at this point we haven't had an opportunity to evaluate what is needed, but once we get our hands on it, we will figure something out. Sure. Keep you posted.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just one question. Mary, how is it measured with regards to the establishments that are doing long-term rentals out of their hotels? So 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because it's not on a per-night basis. So is that rental amount also included as part of the lodger tax?
No, if they have a lease agreement to do that on a rental, like a lease agreement, that's how that is determined. I don't know if any of these in here have that. I don't think so. That didn't come up during the audit that I know of. Mm-hmm. That any of them had a lease agreement for a long-term rental on any of those rooms in there. But I could follow up on that too. I don't see it in here, but if they have a lease agreement for a long-term rental, then no, they don't pay the lodger's tax amount on it.
And I guess my concern would be is just the alleviation of what's actual long-term and what's actual nightly, and do they try to commingle them so that they get out of paying 50% of whatever it is because they're saying that those are long-term rentals. So for me, I guess I would just like to see that as well too. So as far as data-driven, just seeing, how much of your occupancy is actual long-term and what do you actually base on nightly. And when I sat on the lodger's tax a while back, that was the biggest concern, was people were saying, well, are lodgers tax dollars being used properly where they're supposed to be being used? And, this is, I guess, one area where, I guess they could curb and defraud a little bit of what the lodgers tax is set up to do.
Right.
So I guess, I know it's a hard one to tackle because if there's a loophole, they're going to find it.
Right.
And one of the other one was the accountancy also, of where they were commingling mills with room nights, so
Right.
that there was alleviation there.
Right, and I think those have all been corrected because we haven't gotten a finding on this. We did get rid of one last year, so we still have 2 of the repeats that we need to work on. But I can ask them on their work. I would think they would have said something, but it is hard to say that for a week's rent, if they didn't report it or not. They look at their papers that they report to the state on their CRS, and they look at our reports, and then they look at their night audits, and they even do the actual check of like the room cleaning. When they do the actual physical ones that they come on site to do it, they look at the cleaning log to see what rooms are cleaned, to verify against the night audit to say how many were rented. So, they do that, the auditors, for the cost that they charge us, but that's like 6 out of 20. So, it's like a cost to do more, more in-depth auditing internally. But I can check with them to see if they've come across any situation that, they suspected, I guess, a long-term rental that they weren't paying lodgers tax amount on it.
And I can ask, some of the colleagues that we have in Santa Fe also how, like, the Extended Stay Americas do their stuff, because I know they have some where it's like corporate housing, but it's still it's still treated as a hotel.
Right.
So how that's calculated, I'd be happy to look into that also.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Just an action.
I guess one question I have, Mr. Mayor. Marietta, so we don't have the procedures here to approve tonight, right? This is just
No,
this is just the report.
This is just the report that they did. The recommendations and our responses are in here of what we're going to start following once this report, once it was presented to me and we responded to it. So no, we don't have those. So as we get them prepared, we'll take them to the advisory board, let them review it and bring them back to you as, and it's even changing of the ordinance, which Brian has had a full plate of ordinance changes that were priority. So, we haven't gotten to that. Those ordinances have been in effect, however long, many years. So he's taking the top priorities, and he understands this is also a priority. But, those ordinances were written later years. They change, things change, so.
Do you have an idea as to when you might have the procedures for us to approve? I would like to get it, obviously before the next audit schedule is going in. What I'm looking at, our current financial auditors are coming now in August and then in September. So I probably won't have anything ready till probably after September, till they leave, and then try to schedule the new agreed upon procedures to do more like in December or in November and December for this one. So that, to be realistic, I think that would be something. Thank you.
Marietta, being that this, or Brian, being that this has an approval on the agenda, do we need to take action on it, or, if this was just an informative?
In the past, I've always gotten approval on it. I did get the approval at the Lodgers Tax Board, but they are that, and they, with their approval, I think we usually get an approval.
I think that they've made a recommendation, and this probably does need a formal council action, but before we do this again, I really invite the council to interact with the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board. Some of the new procedures may involve policy changes that this body has to authorize. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to be discussed. It's not appropriate probably right now, but there are a lot of decisions that need to be made, and we need some policy direction before we can make a coherent recommendation.
And they meet once a month still? Or is it every quarter?
No, they've been meeting once a month, and that's one thing the advisory board has become very active, and they do meet once a month, and they've gotten very involved.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions, comments? If not, we will go to the next item.
Do you need
Yes, I
approval
need
though? Yeah, she needs an approval.
I'm sorry.
Move approval of the report.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
Sorry, I should have
No problem.
kept you in the loop.
I apologize. I had to take that call as the county manager, so. Okay. Next, we will go to item D, Convention Center repurposing. Request approval to stop accepting reservations for Rio Grande Hall and Baton Hall as of January 1st, 2014, in conjunction with the repurposing of these facilities. Abigail.
Mr. Mayor, council members, a few months ago, staff was directed to issue an RFP for the repurposing of these buildings. The RFP was issued and the responses were deemed non-responsive. Staff is getting ready to allow a second RFP for the same purpose. That date is July 22nd. And so what we would like to do is set an official date where the Convention Center and Baton Hall will no longer be accepting reservations, and staff is recommending that that date be January 1st, and we're asking for the council's approval.
Abigail, on this, do we have prospects already for this repurposing, or?
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'll ask Steve to come up here. He's been working on this along with Oscar.
In other words, what is the rationale to stop booking it?
Mayor, my understanding with talking to the town manager is that if the last booking we have is, two bookings on December 7th. One is a blood drive, a mayor's blood drive, and the other is a wedding reception. We've had no inquiries other than some high school graduations beyond that.
Okay.
And so I think my guidance from the manager is to consider mothballing those two buildings after the holidays so that we don't continue to spend money on utilities.
So we're going to close them down and utilize the resources at in other departments.
Correct.
What's going to happen with the employees that?
We've had one staff member leave from the buildings division and filled that position with someone from the convention center staff. So we have 3 other staff members that we will keep. One here to continue to use Coronado Hall to deal with the rooms like for this meeting, and shift 2 to the custodial and landscaping division.
Primarily it's a business decision.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Speaking of the Rio Grande Hall, I just sent the assistant town manager. I had a request from Representative Gonzalez to have the Legislative Finance Committee, which is a pretty big committee, have their meeting here in August, and that is August 26th through 28th, I believe.
So we have the municipal league.
That's the municipal league, right?
Right. Well, it's the 28th through the 30th. This is the municipal league.
Okay, so they just need a room to meet.
That would be just before it.
And they want to bring all the representatives and senators here. I would like to see if we can accommodate. If we can't accommodate them in our facilities, work something out with a hotel somewhere, because these people are going to come and stay here. So,
Mr. Mayor, I'll make contact with Representative Gonzalez tomorrow and figure something out for them.
Because I'm sure, I think they're at the planning stages now, and if they know that this is the municipal league, I'm sure they'll change their plans. I mean,
I'll speak with him tomorrow.
Yeah, he is part of one of the members of that committee. Reached out to see if they could use one of our facilities. So, yeah,
sure.
Just reach out.
We'll think of something.
Okay. Okay. Any questions? What is the pleasure of the council?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Okay, next we will go to item E, Proposed Water Conservation Ordinance. Recommendation by the town manager regarding water conservation during drought conditions. This is an item that we put on the agenda, or that we received direction from the council at the last meeting to bring up an ordinance resolution as to what we should do as far as water conservation. and being proactive in this drought condition. So, Abigail?
Mr. Mayor, council members, one of the major changes or the biggest change in the ordinance that the town manager is proposing to the current one that exists is that the council have the authority to impose drought conditions. As it stands today, it is difficult to invoke the ability to declare a drought condition because the productions of our wells have to go below a certain number, and it's very unlikely that that will happen. So as it stands, the current ordinance is not usable. So if we do include the portion that indicates that the council has the authority to declare a drought and make changes to the ordinance, this language would allow it to do so.
Brian, from a legal perspective, how does this relate to the wells and Beta and the settlement?
Well, it relates to the wells insofar as the triggering mechanism in the current ordinance requires well production to drop to a level that it's likely never to drop to. So the ordinance in that sense is totally ineffective. We are in the process of a water audit relative to some of the requirements of a beta, and the manager and I had long discussion about this, and before we can coherently advise the council, we need to figure out how we're doing relative to everyone else in New Mexico using water. It may be that we are very conservative right now, and it would therefore be unfair to impose additional restrictions if we're doing very well. So that is in process. We will have that information, and until we have that information, we weren't really able to give you a good faith direction as to where to head if we need to head anywhere. Beta's water conservation provisions are essentially goals. There's no mandate to get to a specific level. The mandates are about usage of wells and moving wells and those sorts of things. Relative to a per capita goal, there isn't one. So we are trying to get you a baseline to be able to advise council as to how we're doing sort of naturally. It may be that the people in Taos are very conservative water users, and it may not be, so we'll have to figure that out. Once we do that, then we can provide some direction as to what the next logical step might be. I just didn't want to guess, and I know Oscar didn't want to guess.
Okay. Councilmember Peralta.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, the ordinance that Santa Fe and Albuquerque have that you provided us with a copy of, it's not a drought ordinance as much as it is a water conservation ordinance to make people conserve water and not overuse during high temperature and low moisture conditions. So it's really to say don't overuse water and be conservative about how you do it. And if you don't do that, then we will fine you. So it's not to create a drought situation or demand that people don't use water because it's a drought. It's just to say if you do these sort of things, we will have enough water to get us through any situation during the hard times. And that was what I was looking at and trying to say, if we could come up with something that guides people into conserving water and not overusing, we wouldn't have to consider necessarily looking at a drought situation or trying to determine how to define a drought, but we would just get people to start being more cautious about how they use their water, and that there being the conservation method.
That's certainly a point well taken, Councilman Peralta. The variable that we have here that is less of a variable in Albuquerque and Santa Fe is that in Albuquerque, the vast majority of people are on the public water system. They don't have a well. Santa Fe is a little less so, but basically you can control water usage because you're measuring the water usage. Here we have sort of a hybrid where we have folks using wells, we have folks that are using municipal water, we have folks using both. And trying to craft some language that encourages conservation and then try to figure out an enforcement mechanism for that, given the sort of hybrid nature of where people derive their water from, is a bit of a pickle.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could, I don't know how much actual enforcement is done in Albuquerque or Santa Fe. I know there's warnings going out, but, actually enforcing and finding people, I haven't seen very much of a record on that. But it seems to be, keeping, at least from the records that they report, seems to keep getting people to conserve water. Is your thought that because somebody's on a well that we can't tell them when they can water?
Well, we can tell them, but if they choose to not listen, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. That's sort of the issue. And then when you...
Is that because they own the water and we don't?
Because the state engineer is responsible for wells. And theoretically, in a perfect world, all the wells in the town would be metered. People would be reporting their use. We would be able to give them some kind of an idea what a normal use versus a abnormal use would be, even when it comes to such simple things as issuing warnings to people for hosing down impervious surfaces and washing their driveway, washing off their house. When you don't know the source is difficult. So I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that we have to do a lot of thinking it through relative to consideration of fairness. Because you're on municipal water, we don't want to penalize people when their neighbor who are also on municipal water but also have a well available to them are doing the same things. Traditionally, the best way to get people to conserve is to do it with economics by charging them more for water over a certain amount. That is a little difficult here given the hybrid nature of the system. We have a lot of people here apparently who have access to wells who use it for irrigation purposes, and theoretically we have no control over that whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you.
On that note, Brian, I agree with Councilmember Peralta. I think identifying exactly where we're at is a good thing. Where are we faring, and are we at a crucial state where we need to start conserving more, or are we pretty well off as far as our water supply? I've heard that we're doing okay, because given that we're at the head gates, if you will, of our watershed, which isn't much now. But I think the intent, given the hybrid nature that you say we have and how hard it would be to enforce that, the intent is to create that awareness. I think enforcement is going to be tough, but as Councilmember Peralta said, we need to start encouraging people to conserve, even though we may have enough here in comparison to down south. But I think that anyone with any compassion to our environment would say, hey, it hasn't rained in months, we should start conserving water, even though we just have it. So I think a public awareness campaign, maybe a resolution while this ordinance is being drafted, a resolution encouraging water conservation. This way, we later can have the ordinance that we can declare a drought condition based on data. But a resolution, is that what you're looking for, Councilmember Peralta? A resolution that encourages, and maybe this could be a joint resolution with the county that can encourage water conservation, because there is people with wells in our municipal boundaries as well as in the county, obviously. So I think maybe a good resolution so that we can create that public awareness on conservation.
Well, we can certainly undertake a draft of that, and it may be the baby step here is just to sort of put before the public what an average water use is considered to be.
Sure.
Just because you have a well and you have the ability to use it for some number of acre feet. I mean, an acre foot of water is an unbelievable amount of water for household use.
Sure.
So it may be that the beginning step is just to try to advise people what what a goal would be, an admirable goal would be, and frankly, at this point in time, I cannot tell you whether we even have one metered well, a private well, in the town of Taos. I don't know if the state engineer has enforced metering of wells. I don't know how people in Taos would feel about metering their wells. I have a pretty good idea how they feel about metering their wells. So those are the kinds of things. And I understand that we need to start somewhere, and I don't mean to even pretend to stonewall this. I started in New Mexico in the state engineer's office in 1995. We need to conserve water no matter what the conditions are weather-wise. And we'll get you a resolution that at least begins to go down that road.
Okay. Councilmember Peralta, and then
Yeah, Mayor, just one thing. I just remembered, it was about 10 or 12 years ago that we had a number of wells in the valley of Taos that went dry. And so there was a push at that time to slow down on your water use, and so that the water table could replenish itself, or a lot of people were going down and having to re-drill their wells deeper. I think if we put out a conservation message out there, then we could help people avert the possibility of drying out their wells as well. And particularly in a time like this when we haven't had the kind of rainfall that we need to replenish our aquifer, it's just a message.
Well, and it's extremely timely, and it does need to be addressed. The town is going to spend, a lot of money is going to be spent on remediation wells to remove the municipal wells that we're using now and relocate them. That theoretically would have the effect of making the private wells much more productive, but then if that has the effect of then wasting that extra water, it doesn't do us any good. We haven't really had a net gain. So I understand the urgency of this. The council's concern about this is extremely timely, and it's going to be a matter of economic necessity, and given the fact that we're going to spend a bunch of money, I mean a bunch of money, to drill remediation wells to the benefit of the in-town area, the buffalo pasture, those sorts of things. This is an issue that we have to get our arms around.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Gonzalez?
Mr. Mayor, I guess with regards to this, I mean, I guess the most useful or most productive way to get the message out to would be public service announcement, but maybe we can get the hotels on board too with regards to the way they launder and do a bunch of other stuff. But one other aspect I was maybe thinking, and I don't know how our building ordinance or our building permitting encompasses it, but the use of low flow urinals and toilets, and especially on developments. So, I mean, I don't know if we're encompassed as part of that as a water saving method also, that it can't exceed X amount, especially for developments that are being done within the municipality. Because, of course, it's always cheaper to get a higher flow toilet, for example, than it is to do a low flow.
Sure.
So I think, and I don't know how we could work with this, but we could work with the hotels even through lodgers tax to because they are lodgers that sit on that board to put the message out there, and it would benefit them as well too in what they pay back to the city.
And I think that could be incorporated in the resolution, encouraging the lodgers and hotels. Okay, any other comments, questions? All right, so we can have a resolution, Brian. When do you think we can have a resolution, Barry?
Yesterday?
Well, I think the manager's gone for another week, so he's going to want to take some time to look at that. And well, I can draft the all-encompassing, wide-ranging resolution relatively quickly by the end of the month, and then you guys can sort of take one from column A, one from column B, whatever you think is tolerable for right now, and we can work from there. But I do think we have to get started, and I understand the council's direction, and I'm encouraged by it, and I appreciate it.
I would also reach out to the county and let them know. I'll do that. Okay. And let them know that I want to do a joint resolution with the county, and that way.
Reaching out to the county is not my best thing, so somebody else probably should do that.
That's why I said I'll go ahead and do that, right? I was going to have you work with the county attorney on this resolution, but Okay. There is a lot of issues that I believe we can work together on. The fireworks was a good example, so.
Good start.
Okay, so direction is to provide a resolution as soon as possible within the next couple of meetings.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, we'll aim for the first meeting in August.
Okay. Is that okay with the council?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Next, we will go to matters from the mayor and council. You said advisory, youth council member? Airport Advisory Board appointment of Mark Patrick to the Airport Advisory Board to replace resigning member John Hilliard for the remainder of John Hilliard's term in accordance with Town Code 212. The term will expire October 2013. Mark Patrick could not be here, but he is very excited to serve in this capacity. Of course, I believe the town of Taos will benefit from his institutional knowledge of the airport and long-standing procedural knowledge of just the overall airport and as a whole. So I would encourage the council to accept this appointment.
Good.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Okay. Next, we'll go to item B, executive session. Council will adjourn to.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry.
before we go into executive, maybe we could get, if Youth Council Member Landgraf has anything, so we don't keep him here all
Okay.
night.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Silva.
real quick before we go into executive session, I'd just like to bring up, I've had a couple of merchants from the plaza area concerned about the ongoing arts and crafts fairs and wanted me to bring it up, as well as the bus grain ordinance. They're making a claim that some of the folks have figured out that if they stay in one place playing their guitar, they end up getting tips and they don't end up getting moved from there. They stay there all day long. And I believe our ordinance says that they're allowed to stay for a couple hours at a time.
Double click on that one. I was going to have you expand that one picture. I believe those are the pictures of the, thank you, Councilmember Silva, for bringing that up. I was supposed to bring that up under matters of the mayor and council. These are the pictures. Councilmember Peralta and I met with the plaza merchants. We had a pretty good turnout of plaza merchants about a week and a half ago. And they had, primarily the meeting was to ask what are the concerns of the plaza, the immediate concerns, and what do they want to see there. One of the concerns that I heard was the Busker Act that we enacted a few years ago that has turned into more of a guise for individuals, more so as loitering and panhandling, and people setting up shop and kind of just asking for money. So
Also, there's a feeling that there's some illegal activities going on by these individuals as well.
yeah, there's some suspicion, and apparently they've kind of known how to guise themselves from the police department, because the police department, every time they go, they haven't been able to see it. And of course, you know, we're not going to station a police officer there at that point. So they showed us some pictures, and if you can go through the next picture. And they say that some guests even refuse to, according to their the meeting we had with them, that some guests are even intimidated to walk in front of them. So I believe that we tried this in good faith to try to make it a
What's he doing?
good, well, yeah, it's pretty obvious what the guy's doing.
Smoking a tobacco pipe.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, so I believe that in the interest of our plaza, I think that maybe this was not the best thing that we could have done, having tried it out. And they're recommending that we repeal the ordinance, and so that it may provide for some easier enforcement. Now, we haven't asked the police department's view on this. Sergeant Weaver, soon to be interim chief Weaver, is here. Maybe he can shed some light as to what his experience has been on that. But based on the input that we received, I think Councilmember Peralta may agree on this, that it may be in the interest of the town to repeal this busker ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, could we repeal it tonight?
Well, many plaza merchants asked me how come I didn't have it on the agenda. I said, of course you have to notice it and follow the procedure. So Sergeant Weaver? Yeah, you could go ahead and turn on the lights there. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Real quick, the busker ordinance, from my experience, is difficult to enforce. It really requires us to have continuity of 2 hours, because the ordinance allows a person to be performing for 2 hours, then they have to stop for another 2 hours, move to a different location, and that requires law enforcement officers to actually make contact, begin kind of a timing process, and then come back, and then often that gets interrupted. Going into the summer, the direction to my staff, to my officers, was to get themselves up to speed on the busker ordinances, also ordinances that dealt with public welfare, littering, and things of those nature. And I specifically wanted them to deal with this topic, and also to deal with this topic inside Kit Carson Park. I believe Kit Carson Park has been a success. We've had officers on bicycles in that area, and we've actually, myself, when I go run, I run through Kit Carson Park in the evenings, and so I think we've alleviated a lot of problems in there. But that section of the plaza where the photographs are taken has consistently been an issue, and the people like to be there because they can bottleneck the pedestrian traffic. They have for about 20 or 30 feet, they have an audience that just really can't get away from them. So the people either have to decide not to go down that alley, or go down it, and they're confronted by those people there. So it can be a difficult ordinance to enforce. If I can have, there have been times that we've been able to assign an officer strictly to the plaza, and when we have an officer there, we don't have that issue, obviously. And unfortunately, I can't do that very often. So there are problems with the ordinance.
So, in your professional capacity, what would you recommend that we do with this?
It would, well, once again, I'm not good with, I'm obviously not a legislative individual.
Sure.
But from a law enforcement aspect, if there'd be some way that we'd be able to pass a non-loitering ordinance, or some area, or some methodology where we would be able to get people to move and actually repurpose that area for the customers to sit and relax and then go on. So I think really some form of a loitering ordinance would probably be the best fit for that area. And we'd actually probably be able to use that for a couple of different areas, probably for a couple of different events.
Perhaps in conjunction with the repealing of the busker ordinance, a non-loitering ordinance. Maybe you can research that. And I mean, I'm not sure, maybe Chief, has other areas that you're aware of have that?
I'm not aware of any area. I'm not. And I have to defer to Mr. James.
Because what is loitering? I think that's pretty subjective. As to,
exactly.
Somebody can be standing there and they can declare that that's part of their free speech.
That's correct.
I think that we start running into a real, because we'd have to know what that loitering definition is. So I think starting with the repealing of the busker ordinance would be a good start, and then seeing where we go from there. Maybe do some research, on the loitering and what municipalities have it, and get a sample of that so we can have Brian look at that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, Mr. Mayor, the process of proving whether somebody's been standing someplace for 2 hours or not is really difficult.
Sure.
So to the extent that we have provisions on the books that establish that as a baseline, certainly would immediately recommend, just from a practicality point of view in terms of enforcement, that doesn't work. Relative to loitering in public places, those are tough. We'll do the best we can. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I mean, this is pretty well understood law.
Okay.
So I'll at least give you an outline of some concepts, and we're not ready to do an ordinance replacing the busker ordinance, certainly by the first meeting in August, that we'd have time to advertise a repeal of that.
Sure.
Then you could take action on that.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Peralta.
Mr. Mayor, Brian, we used to have a non-panhandling ordinance on the books, has that been repealed when they put the Busker Act in place, or?
I'd have them memorize the ordinances, but I'm not recalling a non-panhandling. Santa Fe's done a lot of work on panhandling because it's a huge problem for them relative to the ATM machines on the plaza. It's an excellent place to panhandle, I'm told. So I can certainly talk to the brothers and sisters down there and get an idea of where they're headed with that and then borrow some of their work.
Yeah, because am I correct if we take off the ordinance on the Busker Act, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're stopping these people from doing it, because then we don't have anything on the books that says you can't do that, what they're doing, unless we put something in place that says, such as a non-panhandling ordinance, to keep them from doing it. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah. You don't need legal permission to busk, if that's a word, or be a busker. I don't know if it's a noun or a verb exactly. At any rate, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't preclude that just because we repealed the existing busking ordinance or busker ordinance. And I will work with the folks in Santa Fe and actually had some discussions with them about this already, so we'll just continue with that and try to get to the state of the art. Of course, obviously, there are a lot of interest groups, ACLU, those sorts of folks who are very watchful of that sort of stuff, so it's a sort of a tightrope.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Beta.
Thank you, Mayor Cordova. Councilmember Peralta, we do have a panhandling ordinance. When Chief Anglada was here, he researched it, and many times we enforced it. So if we revoke the Busco ordinance, we do have a mechanism in place today to enforce panhandling. Many times I've driven down the main road and I've called the police department to ask somebody to move along.
Yes, sir.
The key always comes down to enforcement, but it's very clear that the buskering ordinance as it stands today is being abused, and it's not serving its intended purpose, and I would fully support repealing it. Brian James, what would be the notification needed to repeal it? 30 days, 2 weeks, 7 days?
No, we just have to advertise it on the agenda. It requires a regular notice, just like we're passing an ordinance.
And given that, Mr. Mayor, I would recommend that we put it on the agenda for 2 weeks from now, just as Councilmember Silva stated,
to repeal,
for possible action to repeal. And
Well,
I would
have
also...
time to advertise in 2 weeks.
And also, secondly, I'd like to see the idea of saying that all arts and crafts fairs will be held at Kit Carson Park and not in the plaza. I'd like to see that on the agenda also, to move them from the plaza to Kit Carson Park.
Okay. Let me make sure council direction is to repeal the Busker Act. Is that council direction?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's go into the, thank you. Thanks, Sergeant.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Gentlemen?
Thanks.
Let's go into the arts and crafts fairs. In that same meeting, we did discuss the arts and crafts fairs. They mentioned to me that they had signatures from many merchants. I didn't want to put the council to have to compare signatures for or against. I wanted to have some data. So we encouraged the plaza merchants, along with Councilmember Peralta. I think he came up with the idea to what is, how are you affected, and show us some data, show us some numbers. I don't want it, personally, as mayor, I don't want it to be there's 30 signatures here, but there's 60 signatures here, and where are we going to go? So we're going to create a committee headed by our Steve Kennebeck, along with a few of the merchants that are going to identify maybe 4 questions, 3 or 4, 5 questions. We don't want to make it too lengthy. That'll identify, are you in favor of arts and crafts fairs in the plaza? If no, please explain. How are you adversely affected? Are your revenues affected? If so, by what percentage point? So that the council can look at this data and make an informed decision based on actual facts from the merchants, rather than I'm against it, because it hurts my business type of thing. So we're going to bring that up. I believe that this is going to be a policy change to our existing policy, so this isn't going to require the lengthy notice as an ordinance does. But we will bring that up. I believe the last meeting in July is when we're going to bring the Arts and Crafts Fair survey Steve, can you let us know where we're at that?
Right, while Steve is coming up, there was one other thing that we asked him, is that what things on the plaza do they feel would support their business? What activities could we provide on the plaza that would generate traffic to the plaza? And so they're supposed to try to work on some of those ideas as well, so that it's not just shutting down the plaza to everything. We realize the concern over the arts and crafts fairs, but there's also an interest by some of the merchants that were there that day as to doing something on the plaza that creates traffic. And so we're asking them what kind of things can they support to help us try to generate traffic and move people onto the plaza. And we're not talking about local traffic. We're talking about things that would generate interest from visitors to the community as well, to the plaza and the merchants.
And that can be one of the questions.
Yes, sir.
One of the
So what I've done since that meeting, I spoke with Oscar this weekend, and he and I kind of drafted some questions. I have them handwritten right now, and I can type them up. We also spoke with a colleague of ours from other places where Oscar was in public administration, and she has a lot of experience with surveys. So she gave us some pointers as well. So I can get that typed up probably tomorrow and pass it around so you can have a look at it. As I recall from the meeting, we stated we'd have the survey completed by the end of July, so maybe the first meeting in August would be okay. And so that you're aware, there's one more CAV Arts and Crafts Fair scheduled, and there is, I believe that's in September, and then in October there is the Blue Skies Arts and Crafts Fair, and that's all that's booked right now. So what the merchants were asking for is after that last one for this year, not to allow any others.
Okay. So, Councilmember Abita, then since you're talking about that.
Thank you, Mayor Cordova. Thanks, Steve. So when would council see the data, the results of the questionnaire, so that we could make an informed decision? We're talking in the first council meeting of August?
Yes, sir. So what we committed to at the meeting the other day was to have
And that would be fine with me,
complete.
Mr. Mayor, just to allow you to collect that data so that we have more meaningful data to make an informed decision.
Okay, sir. And it's my understanding it'll be all merchants on the plaza will be surveyed, as well as those adjacent to the plaza.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Gonzalez, then Councilmember Pivotal.
Mr. Mayor, I guess also with this, Steve, in this questionnaire, and Mr. Mayor, while Councilmember Peralta is encouraging the merchants to come up with a viable action as to what will bring people into the plaza also, have we looked either through ACD or other purposes to maybe reconfigure that concrete jungle we have in the center of the plaza? I think it may be a good time to also gauge them on that as well. I know the plaza needs several upgrades, but while we're in this ACD mode, I think it would be a good starting point to say, what can we do? How can we make the plaza more viable, along with eliminating the busker act? Because there is one thing that I can't stand when I visit another city, and that is panhandling, especially in their public places. And Taos being as quaint as it is, it's, for me, that's disheartening to see, especially in that little alleyway that's there.
Councilmember, one thing that's in the works is there's a contract ready to be signed by the company to do a downtown master plan, and that should be covered in that plan.
That's what I was going to mention to you, is that as part of the ACD master plan, they're supposed to come up with a refurbishing of the plaza.
Right. So that's done. The contract's ready for signature for the company that was selected from the proposals that were presented. So that should happen relatively soon.
Mr. Mayor, and this doesn't have anything to do with you, Steve. But I'm going to ask a question, and maybe this goes to Brian a little bit. My concern one of my concerns for arts and crafts, whether they're on the plaza or they're at Kit Carson Park or anywhere in the town, on public property, is the fee that we charge to the individual vendor for being there. And one of the concerns by the merchants on the plaza and other places have been that they don't pay any gross receipts tax. and what we charge for a fee for them to be as a part of that arts and crafts fair is minimal. Is it possible for us to create or increase that fee even on the upcoming arts and crafts fair, if the council so desired? To make a reasonable return on the potential loss of revenues because they're not permanent businesses.
Councilman Peralta, it's certainly a legitimate exercise of police power to increase the fee for the future relative to increasing the fee for people that already have a deal in place. That's much more problematic.
So anything that's, Mr. Mayor, so anything that's coming up, whether we, I mean, if we decide to move them out of Taos Plaza into Kit Carson Park, I could definitely support something like that would say, I mean, in the offset of not reporting the GRT, the additional fee. So be that whatever it may, you know, I'd have a big problem with it too. And one of my biggest concerns within the plaza is these individuals that sell pretty much a lot of the same merchandise that some of the, you know, jewelry vendors there sell, is that individual pays obscene amount of rent plus their gross receipts tax when somebody can come in for a weekend and total out that individual's weekly sales with no overhead. So I would like to see it where, I mean, the fee at least would match what a typical weekend sales would generate out of GRT. So be that 8.1875 on their $500 booth space, or be it a flat fee of $250 additional plus their $500 booth space. There's got to be a trade. And I mean, I know several people probably make a living out of this just traveling because there is no overhead other than fuel expense.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember.
To elaborate more on what Councilmember Gonzalez is speaking about, to increase the fee because it's been shown and proven that vendors don't collect the GRT like they can. To increase the fee, you're not addressing the root problem. The root problem is that you're not collecting the GRT. So if in the future, if we move all arts and crafts fairs to Kit Carson Park, when that arts and crafts fair occurs, we could have a town employee there. Any sales that would occur by any vendor would be paid at the town employee's booth. The fee would be recorded of what vendor it was. The GRT would collect it, and I guarantee you our GRT rates, collected rates would go up by 10,000%. Because right now many vendors will sell things and not collect GRT, and who loses out but the community? Having the arts and crafts fairs in the plaza is basically saying, look, plaza merchants, you pay daily rent, you pay overhead, you pay leases, you pay utilities, you pay employees, and we're going to allow these other folks to come in on weekends and rape you. These arts and crafts fairs belong in the Kit Carson Park. They're not competing with other businesses that operate 365 days a year and pay all the expenses. So I fully support having events in the plaza that enable small businesses in the plaza to succeed, but an arts and crafts fairs does the opposite.
And I think what Councilmember Peralta and Gonzalez may be talking about is the remaining ones, to evaluate those remaining ones that are already in the books and evaluate those fees, correct? Is that what
Well, yeah, but Brian kind of clarified it. We couldn't do it.
Okay.
But I guess the thing is to address Councilmember Abeta's concern is that if we add a staffer to it, then we add the staffer's time and scheduling and everything else. So I think the flat fee would probably be less burdensome on staff.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we bring the data and let's look at what other communities are doing as far as the booth space when they have it on public properties. I do believe that our fees are low.
They're very low.
Yeah, I think they're very, very low. And so let's look at that and then we'll base that, whether they're in, well, I think direction, if data supports it, I think the council may want to take them to the Kit Carson Park, all arts and crafts fairs. So the question is, once they're moved there, then what is going to be that price, the fee? So if we can have some data to make that informed decision.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right, is that the direction? Did I kind of get the direction okay?
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Silva started this mess.
Well, I thought it would only take a few minutes, but it needs to be addressed.
Okay, so,
Everything's a few minutes.
yeah, everything.
Sorry, Brian.
Next item is executive session. Item B, council will adjourn to executive session to discuss limited personnel matters regards to employment agreements for the town manager and town attorney pursuant to NMSA 1978-1015, 1H2. Action to follow.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn to executive session, to go into executive session.
So move.
There was a
Oh,
motion.
second.
And a second.
So-
You guys
Already did.
Yeah, they already did. And a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. We'll be back.
So I guess the question is, can we generate already by
You're not coming in?
higher rate or honestly collecting the GRT?